as a stock purchase. These guys are totally all sleeping in the same bed. The lawsuit provides an example of the laundering mechanism and counsel to Scam Sam financial novella. Surprise, surprise. Where some FTX creditors have gathered and joined a class action lawsuit against Sullivan and Cromwell. So here's a copy of the lawsuit, and I really like the formatting here because they included some funny things. Where right away they make it known that they demand a jury trial. Also, they quote right underneath Ryan Miller, one of the former attorneys from FTX and Sullivan Cromwell, where he went on to form his own firm. So they quote him right on the front page where he announces his new firm, where he says, the difference between something that's illegal and something that needs your advice and counsel to get corrected is usually pretty stark. That is so funny. Well, he would certainly know, wouldn't he? Also kind of taking a humorous approach, they provide this picture in the lawsuit documents of Ryan Miller, which is a very goofy picture because you can easily find a picture of him online wearing a suit. Also, right below the picture, they provide a message that Ryan Miller wrote right as FTX was collapsing, where he says, I need to wire $4 million to Sullivan and Cromwell to make sure we're all represented and we preserve any value that is left tomorrow. Sending money from FTX.com. He wrote cash, which is pretty interesting. Where oddly enough, he said, who can do it? And I'm in charge now. That's kind of a full conviction statement. I'm in charge now. Where they write in the lawsuit, where SNC is of the foremost and most profitable American multinational law firms in the world, founded in 1879, highlighting achievements by its founders, including advising JP Morgan, world's largest bank, where they advised JP Morgan during the creation of General Electric back in 1882. Of course, many people have pointed out that the firm is not impartial and might even be in collusion with John Ray. Even Barbara Freed has alluded to that. So of course, Ryan Miller is important because he used to work at the CFTC. On top of that, he had a close relationship with Gary Gensler. But Ryan Miller continued to outsource some of the legal work from FTX. So another funny part is that Daniel Friedberg and Sullivan and Cromwell were also called upon these lawyers, these firms, who brought the lawsuit forward, and they say that they have unsuccessfully tried for many months to amicably discuss obtaining discovery materials or any information regarding Sullivan and Cromwell and its involvement with FTX, where they say they tried to get depositions from Daniel Friedberg, Ryan Miller, and others at Sullivan and Cromwell, and they just ignored them. Where the lawsuit just flat out says that Sullivan and Cromwell itself has basically blamed Scam Sam for the FTX collapse while downplaying any of its involvement, which of course has drawn the scrutiny of many regulators, including senators, highlighting specific conflict of interest, of course. The lawsuit points to a January 2023 U.S. trustee that was appointed by the Department of Justice, where that U.S. trustee actually submitted a letter objecting to Sullivan and Cromwell's involvement in the bankruptcy itself, where they said that Sullivan and Cromwell's own disclosures were insufficient to evaluate whether Sullivan and Cromwell itself satisfies the bankruptcy code's conflict-free and disinterested standards. They added that SNC's close connections to the insiders rendered SNC too conflicted to investigate the debtor's downfall, the collapse. On top of that, they found that the DOJ trustee concluded that FTX debtor application to have and to retain SNC as legal counsel for bankruptcy proceedings, that they omitted from that application that Ryan Miller himself was a partner at SNC. They say that this application by FTX also omitted any details about the type of service, the type of legal service provided by SNC to FTX pre-bankruptcy. These guys appear to be professional crooks. They also point to Sullivan and Cromwell being lead counsel for BlockFi, which of course was another FTX competitor, which they say this is another conflict of interest because SNC was representing BlockFi against the Securities Exchange Commission. So Sullivan and Cromwell representing BlockFi is an important detail because they point a bankruptcy code section 327A. They say that attorneys hired by the bankruptcy estate cannot hold or represent an interest adverse to the estate itself and must be disinterested persons. Now, you can't get more clear than that, and that is part of the bankruptcy code. But of course, the sharks, the vultures, wanted their cut because Sullivan and Cromwell sent one of their partners, Andrew Dietrich. He told the bankruptcy court that based solely on the conflict's procedures, Sullivan and Cromwell is not aware of any conflicts between its representation of the debtors and its current clientele, or former clientele, that would cause Sullivan and Cromwell not to be disinterested persons. What a load of these guys, professional liars, obviously and completely full of it. They go on to say that Sullivan and Cromwell decided to intentionally keep the FTX US derivatives account, which was formerly LedgerX Exchange. They decided to keep that account out of the FTX bankruptcy proceedings. They say this was done intentionally because they knew, they had knowledge, that there was $250 million in that account, all of which was customer money that SNC could and has been extracting significant revenue from. Pretty interesting. And on top of that, the reason for the purchase itself was because FTX could not stand the scrutiny of getting its own licenses, and Sullivan and Cromwell should have known that. Where Sullivan and Cromwell, along with Ryan Miller, were involved in FTX's acquisition of LedgerX, which was a crypto, futures, and options exchange out of Miami. So it was already regulated and had obtained licenses from the CFTC. Furthermore, they say that Ryan Miller, through his connections at the CFTC, Gary Gensler, SEC, etc., facilitated direct and private communications to the CFTC commissioner at the time. Surprise, surprise. CFTC Commissioner Rostin Benham, whom Scam Sam and Ryan Miller had a direct and through-line communication with. In probably the most damning allegations, they say that Sullivan and Cromwell represented FTX and of course Scam Sam using a laundering vehicle, a company called Emergent, which was used to buy the Robinhood stock with FTX customer money, where Sullivan and Cromwell represented Scam Sam as an individual retaining the FTX customer money. So the not so funny part was that Sullivan and Cromwell served as the primary counsel for Emergent, which was a subsidiary of FTX itself. They say that the company, the entity, Emergent, was totally a laundering vehicle critical to the FTX fraud. The lawsuit provides an example of the laundering mechanism, where in May of 2022, they say that a $316 million and a $35 million transfer was sent to Scam Sam and Gary Wang's personal FTX.com accounts, labeled as founder loans, but that the same dollar amounts were transferred back, labeled capital contributions from those personal accounts to Emergent. That account, they say, literally called emergent@placeholder.com. And they have in quotes that this Emergent account is just a placeholder, that funds should not stay there. And then after that, the same amount of money was transferred from the emergent@placeholder.com back to Alameda Research as a stock purchase. Pretty interesting. Where the lawsuit quotes one of our favorite crooked lawyers, Daniel Friedberg, they quote him as saying, "It is just a round trip from Alameda Research to Scam Sam, Gary Wang, and then to Emergent, and then back to Alameda Research." So Sullivan and Cromwell was the primary counsel for Emergent and counsel to Scam Sam in a personal capacity when he was buying the Robinhood stock, worth about $500 million at the time. So the lawsuit is saying that Sullivan and Cromwell not only agreed, but participated in all of these unlawful behaviors. Of course, unlawful behaviors to enrich themselves, which, funny enough, they continue to do. Vultures and sharks to the 10th degree. Furthermore, they add that Sullivan and Cromwell itself improperly filed with no proper authority and may have been clouded by the benefits of potential employment. Unsurprisingly, in a footnote, they point to Michael Lewis's book, where he claims to tell the story of how SBF signed over the FTX proceedings and naming John Ray as the new FTX CEO. That as a practical matter, Sullivan and Cromwell essentially lined up John Ray to replace Scam Sam as the CEO at FTX, and then John Ray turned around and hired them back. These guys are totally all sleeping in the same bed. Funny enough, the lawsuit also points to Ryan Miller listing himself as the contact person with the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, as a contact person for the filing of the Robinhood stock, maybe knowing that his name would be recognized. Who knows? Next, they highlight the Court of Appeals that ruled an independent examiner should have been appointed. This will be the second fee examiner. Who knows how independent they will be, because the first one that I made a video about was completely and utterly useless. I mean, really. The lawsuit goes through many jobs that were basically outsourced to Sullivan Cromwell prior to the collapse, basically highlighting the relationship they've had for years, with the fees charged being high but nothing completely crazy. They're just trying to show that Sullivan Cromwell knew a lot about the inner workings of FTX and Alameda, and of course, Scam Sam, and all the insiders, especially with Ryan Miller, the former partner, working directly as legal counsel for FTX. Now, one of the last points they make has to do with a potential bailout that Scam Sam was trying to get from CZ, from Binance Crypto Exchange, the world's largest. So they say that CZ and Binance, the lawyers at Binance, with due diligence, they were able to find a lot of errors, a lot of problems, a lot of mistakes within 24 hours of them investigating, looking at the possibility of the bailout, where they quote Binance as saying that there were way too many issues to consummate a deal. And Binance was, of course, looking to bail them out before the collapse. And where they uncovered all of these deficiencies that could potentially lead to federal investigations, all within 24 hours. So the lawsuit brings this up because they say that the speed with which ZZ and Binance was able to identify the misconduct at FTX demonstrates that any party with even cursory visibility into FTX could see the FTX group's misconduct, which of course included Sullivan and Cromwell, because they say that what CZ and Binance was looking at, that information, was also being looked at by Sullivan and Cromwell itself, where in fact they may have been involved in the negotiations themselves with Binance. So they argue that SNC had already profited tons of money pre-collapse, helped perpetuate the whole fraud, and then on top of that, has gained hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Very interesting lawsuit, and these guys are probably onto something. Whether they stand a chance, well, that remains to be seen. But hopefully they put up a good fight, of course, for the sake of justice. Crazy that the request for discovery materials, depositions, completely ignored not just Sullivan and Cromwell, but also Daniel Friedberg. These guys obviously don't give a shit, and these are the customers suing them. There really is a lot of bad people out there, sociopaths. And of course, it's well known that America's former favorite CEO, Scam Sam, used to work at the Sullivan and Cromwell offices in Lower Manhattan. They were very, very close, and even Sam's parents think that he was stabbed in the back by Sullivan and Cromwell, which continue to siphon money out of FTX. Financial novella. It's too bad that from the main characters, only Nishad Singh seems to have come out winning with his romance story, as opposed to the former lovers, Caroline and Scam Sam. Alright guys, well thanks for spending time with me. Please don't forget to smash a like, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one.